Hello, I want to give you an update on the Jubilee teaching, or Jubilee season teaching that I did that's been on the front of our Family Foundation's website. I did that teaching back in February of 2010. It's now July of 2010. Now, if you haven't heard that teaching and you don't understand what I'm talking about by a Jubilee cycle, I encourage you, please go to our Family Foundation's website, www.familyfoundations.com, and click on the Jubilee teaching link. Listen to those two video presentations, and then this one will make a lot more sense. So this is an update. We're now in July 2010. And I believe we're well into this Jubilee cycle. What I'm talking about is a time period that probably is 3 to 4 years, from about March of 2008 into 2011, 2012, where we're having a debt reset. Jubilee from Leviticus chapter 25 talks about 3 things will happen. All debt will be canceled. All debt slaves will be set free, and all property will revert back to the original owner. This is foreclosure, repossession, bankruptcy, or our modern day terms for these. Now, what's happening now? I believe here in the middle of 2010, we're beginning to experience the next leg down of the Jubilee cycle. For the last 14, 15 months, we've had a huge rally back in the stock market. I believe that that's not a recovery. That actually is the largest suckers rally that we've had since the 1930s. Drawing people back into the market, causing them to think everything's okay, whereas in reality, it's just a rally back in a depression, and I think we're ready to see the next leg starting down. I believe this next leg down in the second half of 2010 will probably take the Dow, the S&P 500, our regular market indicators, lower than they went in 2008. That's my expectation. I could be wrong, but why do I think that? Very simple. We're not in recovery. We're in a Jubilee season. When does Jubilee end? When all the debt is purged. So here's the question. Is all the debt in our country eliminated? Personally, corporately, nationally? I think the answer comes pretty quickly. No, it's not. So we're in for a greater decline. We may have another 1 or 2 rally backs before we hit the bottom, just like we did in the 1930s depression. Actually, 7 rally backs in total before we came to the bottom in the end of 1932 into 1933. And so I believe that's what we'll see in 2010, 2011. We'll see real estate prices decline. Commercial is probably about to head down. Residential's gone halfway to where it needs to go, in my opinion. We'll see precious metals go down, and we'll see the value of the dollar increase, not decrease. Why? Because we're in a deflation, not an inflation. Now, I hear a lot of Christians even talking about hyperinflation coming, inflation coming. I want to tell you, and the purpose of this presentation is to let you know, I don't believe that we will see inflation or hyperinflation until the 2020s, at least 10 years off. I think we're in a deflationary depression. Now, why am I sitting in my bathroom talking to you? Well, because I want to talk to you today about the bathtub theory of economics. Now, I have a master's in business administration from the University of Chicago. They did not teach me the bathtub theory of economics at the university, but I have learned that just through observation over the last 30 years. And so here's what I'm saying. I believe the water level in my bathtub can be likened to the water level in our economy. When the water level is rising, that's representative of inflation. When the water level is declining, that's representative of deflation. Now, what controls that? 2 factors. Water coming in through the faucet, water going out through the drain. The sum of those 2 vectors determines the level of water. So if there's more water going out through the drain than water coming in through the faucet, the water level goes down. If there's more water coming in through the faucet than going out through the drain, the water level then goes up. So what is water coming in through the faucet? Well, that is the money supply, ultimately the M3 money supply, meaning not just money that's created by printing $100 notes, so to speak, or what the Federal Reserve is creating. It's the fractional reserve banking system that's multiplying money far greater than anything the government is doing. And on the other hand, and by the way, that's the increase of the creation of capital. When we put $100 or let's say $1,000 in the bank doesn't keep the whole $1,000. They keep maybe $100, and let's say they lend out $900. And now that $900 comes back into the banking system, they keep $90 and lend out $810. Now what happens? We have some $2,710 listed on the books of the bank or banks as assets, but really, how much do they have in the bank? Well, they only have a couple $100. But they're listing $2,710 as asset. Okay, that's creation of capital. What have they done? They've created money out of thin air. What happens, on the other hand, when we hit a Jubilee cycle like we're in now? Is there a lot of capital creation? No, there's just the opposite, capital destruction. What is that? That's when the guy that you lent the $900 to lets you know, I can't pay the $900. So what happens? He defaults on that and money disappears into thin air. The bank had $900 asset listed on its balance sheet. All of a sudden when the man defaults, I can't pay, the $900 disappears into thin air the same way it was created out of thin air. So let me just ask you this question. Right now in this particular season, this Jubilee season, do you think that we're creating capital or destroying capital? And here's the answer. We are destroying far more capital than we're creating. So when the Federal Reserve lowers the interest rate to 0% or something near zero, that's like turning on the faucet valve full blast with what the Federal Reserve can do. But what's the problem? How come there's really not so much money coming into the system? Very simple. The banks aren't lending money. They're not creating capital by lending money. What's happening instead? Just the opposite. People are defaulting on their loans left, right, and center. What are those defaults? That's the drain that I just opened. That's water disappearing out the drain. Suppose we turn the faucet on full blast by lowering the interest rate to zero, and so we've got as much money coming into the system as we can, but the M3 is disappearing. It's way down below zero, and M3 isn't measured by the government. I shouldn't say it isn't measured. It's measured but not reported. They stopped reporting it a couple years ago. Don't know why. But estimates of the M3 are that it is plunging at the moment, meaning even money coming into the system, water coming in through the faucet, is not at some huge rate. It's actually declining and getting less and less and less. But yet what's happening on the other side? Capital destruction. We've got more money going out the drain than we've seen since the 1930s depression. What is the money going out the drain? Defaults on loans. Default by people who own houses and can't pay. Businesses who can't pay their notes. We have sovereign nations that can't pay their debt. That's all money going out the drain. And here's what I want to tell you. That is in the order of hundreds of trillions of dollars. I've seen figures upwards of $600 or $700 trillion of debt that is being destroyed ultimately in this current Jubilee season. Now, when we're talking about money coming in through the faucet, people talk about $700 billion TARP funds, for example, as being a big number. $700 billion is not even $1 trillion. If we have triple digit disappearing down the drain of trillions of dollars, 100, 200, 300, 600 trillion dollars going out through the drain, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 5 trillion coming in through the faucet, is the water level going to rise or decline? And the answer is, of course, it's going to decline. What I'm saying is, for the rest of this year, next several years, we can expect there to be a continuation, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I believe this is what God's been showing me and what I see from Jubilee, that the debt purge is going to result in the water level going down. We're going to have a huge, and are in the midst of a huge deflationary depression, not a double-dip recession, a deflationary depression like the 1930s. Now that shouldn't scare you if you've been listening to what we've been talking about for the last couple of years. Get out of debt, make sure that you're not invested in things that are declining. In other words, residential real estate, commercial real estate, precious metals. I hear a lot of people talking about buy precious metals because inflation is coming. My personal opinion, that's absolutely wrong. I'm expecting the price of gold to go way down, not up. Why? Because we're in a deflation. Now, if you understand these principles, and this turns out to be right, we are indeed in a Jubilee season, we're going to see more exciting miracles from God in the next couple of years than we've ever seen. And if you're prepared to take advantage of that, I believe this is going to be the greatest time of evangelism that you've ever seen in your life. And we are going to be in a position, remember there's a huge wealth transfer. It goes from those who have borrowed and cannot repay to those who show mercy and give. I encourage you, make sure you're on the show mercy and give side of that spectrum, and you will be in for the greatest time of your life in the next few years. God bless you.